Welcome to the 28th edition of Iowa Hawkeyes Live here at the Voice of College Football, Iowa at the Voice of College Football here on YouTube. Mark, good to see you. We're talking Iowa football for the next hour. Hopefully we get a lot of people on here and not a lot going on as far as the, rumor mill is concerned, but some big news this week in the transfer portal. We can get to that in a moment here. But Mark, first of all, for our Iowa listeners, how are you holding up during the offseason so far?
Doing well. Iowa, for better or worse, and I think I know your opinion on this, less activity than all the other teams that I talk about. The transfer portal, and it just seems as though that there's more going on with just about every other team that I cover on a fairly regular basis. But and also with spring practice coming up here in about a month to 6 weeks, correct? It hit me as soon as we started to record that we'll need to get into some positional breakdowns here, maybe starting next week.
Yeah, I think beginning of April? Is that the first? I have to grab the date. But yeah, it's going to be here before you know it. Kirk Ferentz did have his. I don't think we did. I think he had his press conference last Wednesday, Mark. So it was the day after we had our last live show. Yeah. Because, of course, we had signing day and Iowa just the one recruit on signing day. So, yeah, not a lot of action there. And that was pretty much expected. Deshaun Lee out of the kind of Detroit area. He's originally from Detroit, but from Michigan, 3-star corner. Good get for Iowa on signing day, and they were able to make that official. So that's good. The big news this week on the Iowa football front, Mark, is the commitment by Hunter Nourzad to Penn State. That's the one I've been saying for weeks was the biggest decision looming for Iowa in the portal, because it's clear that Iowa is not interested in going to the portal at quarterback. So certainly the offensive line, and this is not just me saying this. We asked Don Patterson this exact question on our season finale show. I said, what is the biggest need for Iowa in the portal? And his two positions were quarterback and offensive line, specifically tackle. As you know, Mark, the tackle position struggled this year because the line as a whole had one of its best pieces in the history of college. Well, I shouldn't say maybe history of college football. That's probably a little above and beyond, but you could argue one of the best centers to ever play college football by the numbers in Tyler Linderbaum. But collectively, boy, the outsides of that line need to improve. Hunter Nourzad from Cornell is the kid that Iowa was high on, and I'll pull up a banner so people can see his bio. It sounds like he's a plug-and-play guy, and so he commits to Penn State, 6'4", 298. I mean, he's going to, again, you're talking about a totally different level of football in the Ivy League. I get that. But his final five schools were, of course, Iowa, Penn State, Virginia Tech, Auburn, and Illinois. And he picks the Nittany Lions, who I understand are doing very well right now on the recruiting front, which is nothing new. I mean, that's what Penn State does, but it hurts when you're in Iowa, when you lose out to a fellow Big Ten school. And certainly this is a piece that Iowa could have used. They desperately needed. And I don't really know, Mark, where Iowa turns to from here at that position. There are a couple other guys in the portal that we can talk about that Iowa has offered, one of which recently visited. But I don't know what Iowa's going to do at that position other than rely on the young talent they have.
To go back to your opening statement, you had mentioned that Don Patterson flagged tackle and quarterback as the two biggest needs for the team.
Absolutely.
Now, we know that the nature of quarterback is different than the other positions with only one starting, and we know the flurry of activity across the nation. Now, I check in frequently when you get together with Don. I had not necessarily heard you address that. I've heard you address it as a solo act a number of times.
So have others.
But with Don there, I had not heard him address that. So it's interesting to know that, and it seems very obvious to the two of us, and obviously Coach Patterson, that the quarterback position should be addressed, but that seems to have passed the program by for this offseason.
Yeah, and it's nothing. It's not like Don's betraying the program saying that. I mean, it's like it's any position. What position is What position do you have the biggest need in recruiting? Specifically, I mean, the reason why we bring up those two positions is because we're looking at an immediate need. I mean, you can go out and get Deshaun Lee. Say Iowa was hurting at corner. Deshaun Lee out of Michigan may help them immediately at that position. But as a true freshman who's not enrolling early, you're probably not counting on him. And I could say that about Cale Crow, who Iowa got out of Huxley, just south of us here in Ames, about 9 miles south. He's a big kid who's going to end up being a tackle at the Big Ten level, but he's a freshman and he's not enrolling early. He's probably not going to be playing. Is it possible? I suppose it's possible. Jack Dotzler, another one from Wisconsin that Iowa has coming in during this class. But the point is they need immediate help at tackle. I think you could argue they could use a plug-and-play guy at guard. They've got a lot of pieces there, but it just seems like the development is just inching, and it needs to go a little bit faster here, especially as we get into spring. This needs to be a really, really progressive time. But no, quarterback, it's clear. The numbers, we've ran through the numbers every which way, Mark, that is a position of need. But yeah, it's clear to me that Iowa's not going to address that via the transfer portal. So my hopes were really on Hunter Norzad, who Iowa was in on early. He is as soon as he entered the portal, Iowa went after him, and it's been a process. Hunter's taken his time with this, and they lost the battle to Penn State. So it's disappointing. They are in on Steven Stilianos, who just visited Iowa. So he's a 6'5" tight end out of Lafayette University. Believe he has offers from Rutgers, from Syracuse. I want to say he's got at least one or two other, maybe Virginia's in on him as well. He's got a number of high major offers, but it's just an odd target, Mark, because there's not really an immediate need at that position. Now they need depth at that position, but here's a kid who's a grad transfer. Now he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. I have a hard time seeing him coming here because Laporta's back and Luke Lachey is back. And does anybody believe that Steven Stilianos is going to come in here? Maybe he would outcompete Lachey and earn that second tight end spot. I just think it's an odd position to be going to the portal for, Mark. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, if there's a position that I'm going to trust Iowa's judgment as a coaching staff, I guess that would be the one. But yeah, Laporta's, where would you rank him both in the Big Ten and nationally? He's an accomplished tight end.
I mean, don't you think he's probably going to be if you're just, I guess I'm not a tight end expert as it relates to the national landscape, Mark, but just off the top of your head, Jake Ferguson is gone from Wisconsin, I believe, although I don't know that officially. I know he's a senior. But who else he's got to be considered the best tight end returning in the Big Ten, correct?
Yes.
So, does Steven Stilianos come here with 2 years of eligibility remaining and other Power 5 offers? Does he come to a school? It is tight end U, in my belief, and I think it's recognized by a lot of schools as tight end U, or certainly an opportunity for a kid like that to, as a stepping stone to the next level. But does he really want to come here with not even, first of all, he knows he's not going to be the tight end 1. Maybe he'll be tight end 2. Now, maybe he's banking on, okay, I want a year of development in that program, and then give me one bang in year 2, because Laporta will be gone and it will be him and Lachey conceivably. So maybe that's what he'll do. I just think it's an interesting decision, and I don't know what Syracuse looks like at that position. I don't know what Rutgers looks like at that position. Of course, he's on the East Coast now, so he'd be moving quite a ways inland. But certainly he's a pretty high major transfer portal target. And the good news, again, with the free COVID year is guys like Steven do get 2 years.
The real MVP is letting us know not to give up hope because JT Daniels is still available.
It's almost like people who come in the chat here. Now, I'm not going to name names, even though you just named one. It's almost like people that come in the chat want to get me to get ripped, because it's like they bring up the quarterback, they'll just throw that out there, and then I go on a rant about it, and then I get ripped for it.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah, JT Daniels, he's not coming here. We know that, but yeah, he is still out there.
See, I know that as well as you do, but again, I don't know why.
You don't know why you know that?
I don't know why JT Daniels wouldn't come here, or that to Iowa, or that Iowa would not pursue JT Daniels?
Okay, yeah. So there's the second question is a valid question. The first question is completely erroneous, Mark. That first question that you asked is completely erroneous
because of the second.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Because for a player to come here, he has to first be wanted. The coaching staff has to first actually pursue said portal target.
Now, Corey, we've got a number of player transactions or potential transactions that you taken us down the road here. We also, in addition to the questions that we receive in the live chat during the show, of course, unfortunately, don't normally get to take on the questions that come into the channel throughout the week. So I'm going to filter through those and see if I can find us a few gems in addition to monitoring the live chat. I know you'll love this one. Somebody's got a paragraph to write, so I'm not going to sift through all that. But Lort 7 days ago makes this statement that Iowa fans need to understand that actual good quarterbacks are very hard to find.
Well, I mean, that's such a relative term, isn't it? A good quarterback. What is a good quarterback?
I don't think they're that hard to find.
Well, they're not that hard. If you just had to ask how many good quarterbacks, there've been a lot of. I think if you're starting at a Power 5 school, I think most of those starters would be considered good quarterbacks, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I would refute this statement that it's just kind of a give up statement that you guys are obviously, this is the way I read into this, is that we're criticizing the football program for not pursuing a quarterback, and we need to realize that they're hard to find. Well, we can sit here for the next 3 or 4 minutes and list off teams all over the country that are finding them, and many of those programs are not at the level of Iowa.
Absolutely. I mean, Arizona is the first one on the list. Remember the situation with Arizona? I mean, they went out and got the reigning, SEC. What was the SEC?
Pac-12.
Oh, excuse me, Pac-12 freshman of the year. I don't know why I said SEC. Yeah. So reigning Pac-12 offensive player of the year in Jaden Delora. And I remember talking with Don Patterson about Delora. And he said, that's hard to do as a freshman, as a quarterback, to be the freshman of the year as a quarterback. That's just not I can't imagine that being a real, I just can't imagine that happening very often because of the simple fact that usually freshmen aren't playing. And, certainly, again, we can harp on it all we want, but Kirk made it clear during his press conference last Wednesday, and he wasn't asked specifically about the portal. I guess specifically at quarterback. I have to listen back to the conference. He probably mentioned something about the portal at some point. But he was asked the question mark. And this kind of, bothered me a bit. And I understand where he's coming from. I understand this is what he's going to say. But he was asked, Chad Leistico of the Des Moines Register asked him a very honest, very fair question. Basically, some fans, people on the outside believe that maybe a scheme change is in order for the offense. And Kirk responded basically in summary saying, well, I would point to the fact that we're, in the top 5 for most wins over the past 5 years. So, and that's the name of the game, was winning, Mark. So
the top 5 in the Big Ten.
No, nationally in win percentage.
In the last 5 years?
Since, I believe he said 2015. I haven't went back to corroborate the stats, so maybe it's the last 6 years.
The top 5 in the nation in wins?
I don't know. Look it up, or maybe win percentage or wins. It's one of those two.
The same thing. But
10 wins this year, 6 wins in an 8-game season in 2020. He won 12 games in 2015. They won 8 games in 16.
I guarantee you, they do not have one of the top 5 winning percentages in the country since 2015. Even if you want to take it 2015,
they won 10 games in 2019. Oh, we look it up, Mark. Somebody look it up.
I don't know how you can look that up. You're going to have to take a handful of teams.
I'm sure he's not just blowing hot air. I'm sure there's substance behind it, but maybe I'm slightly misquoting him. I didn't really come prepared.
Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, they all have better winning percentages since 2015, easily. So that's right off the top of my head. I don't know what he's talking about when he says that.
I think I've got that. Let me see if I've got that. I think I've got that clip here, Mark. Let me see if I've got that clip that we can.
So
we can
2015.
play. Maybe I don't. I thought I did. I think I deleted it. Didn't want it to. Yeah, I don't have it. We could certainly find that though, Mark.
You have to run some kind of filter. You'd have to have a program, or there has to be a site that you can.
Well, I mean,
those
stats are out there though, Mark.
Oh, the stats are out there to manually go through.
Somebody's obviously telling him this information, right? He's got a PR person that's helping him with that. So I'm sure there's some there's coaching for the coaches, right? Behind the scenes of how to respond to certain things. So
yes.
And I'm not criticizing. I mean, the fact of the matter is, he is right. They have won a lot of games, Mark. They've won 10 games in the last 3 years. I mean, that's really good. It's 10 games in 2 of the last 3 years, and then 6 and 2 in the COVID shortened years. So those are 3 really good years from a win-loss standpoint. The problem becomes the 3 losses they had, 4 losses. 3 of the 4 losses they had this year were blowout losses. That's the problem. One was against Purdue, one was against Wisconsin, one was against Michigan. That's the problem. And you're not winning Big Ten championships. So that's what the other side will say. I'm not saying I'm siding with either end on this, but that's devil's advocate in this.
Okay. Well, I don't have the time. It would not be productive in terms of my contribution to the show to try to answer that question and list as many teams and go through all the records. But off the top of my head, top 15? Yes. They're not in the top 5 in winning percentage since 2015. Anyway.
Hold on a second. I'm going to find it. I got the transcript right in front of me, Mark. Okay. I got the transcript right in front of me.
While you're looking for that, Corey, the real MVP is letting us know, and I certainly agree with him, that the rants, and we will insert your name, Corey's rants from disappointment or anger, are the best YouTube videos.
Yeah, they're also the videos that I've gotten absolutely torched on. So, I mean, but I appreciate the real MVP. Okay, so talking about D-backs, recruiting. Yeah, here it is. So the question was from Chad Leistigo, what do you think when people say, maybe even people in the media say, maybe a scheme change might be in order or something, some kind of little reboot with the offense? Do you think that's necessary? Okay, so maybe he's talking about Big Ten. Maybe I misunderstood. I mean, you're right. Obviously, he can't be talking nationally. He says in response, this is Kirk Ferentz, and I quote, I guess my answer would be we're 3rd in wins since 15. I mentioned 15. Last 4 years, we were 2nd in wins in the conference. That's the ultimate goal for us. It's not all about winning, but obviously when we line up and play on Saturdays, that's what we're trying to do, no matter who we're playing or where it is. You do get evaluated on that. I know it's a little bit more detailed now in the sophisticated world of evaluation, but for me, that's what I'm fixated on. If they've got the ball 40 minutes and we've got it 20 and we win, I'm happy we won. I'm not happy about the way we won. I'd rather have the ball 40, but ultimately it's finding a way to win. And this is what really bothered me about the statement. I kind of identify with what San Francisco did 2 Saturdays ago. Block kick, block field goal, and then the punt. Maybe they didn't deserve to win, but they were playing last Sunday and the other team wasn't. But guess what, Mark? They're not playing this Sunday. So it's a bad analogy. It's a bad analogy. You're placing a ceiling. You're comparing yourself to a team that has placed a ceiling because of how it plays. San Francisco was never winning that Super Bowl, Mark. We all know that.
No.
They don't have the quarterback. They don't have the offense. So then he says, maybe they didn't deserve to win. They were playing last Sunday. Another team wasn't. To me, that's what it's all about. Then we'll work through the things that are challenges, just like we've done every year. We've had challenges. That's what the game is all about. That's what we're looking at.
So
he must be talking Big Ten. So I apologize.
Regardless
Top 3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, regardless of the business or industry, if you are a competitor with, in Kirk's viewpoint, he doesn't look nationally. He's looking at the Big Ten, and that's fine. He's seeing 13 competitors. He's one of 14. His team, his corporation is one of 14. Fill in the blank of whatever you're producing if you're competing in an industry, And if you're in the top 5 out of 14, you're number one, satisfied with that. Number two, you're not looking to correct the aspects of your company that are bringing you down to the 3rd, 4th, or 5th spot.
That's why football, I've said it a million times, Mark, football should never be evaluated strictly based off of wins and losses, because there are things. There are things called national championships. You can go down the list. They're evaluating a football team is so much different than evaluating any other sport. Especially, I mean, I'm specifically college football, but even the NFL. A perfect example is, and we brought this up before, what Ohio State did during the season, right? They had lost one game to a good Oregon team, not a great Oregon team. That was not a good loss for Ohio State at home, but a good Oregon team. You lose one game at home and you fire your DC. I mean, why? Why, Mark? Ohio State has how many conference championships have they had in the last 5, 6 years? Why would you fire your DC?
They've had all of them until last year.
Sorry about that, Mark. Go ahead.
You left this for a second there.
Go ahead.
So I will assume what you were stating there. They fired the defensive coordinator because that portion of the team, the unit, the program, the organization is not producing.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that how you should evaluate? It's 3 teams in one, correct?
Yes. And just to extend on that particular example, the one portion of it, the offense, is arguably the best in the country. So it's being weighed down by a defense that's 40th in the country, 50th in the country. Okay, well, that cost them 2 games.
Well, it cost them 3 games. I mean, it cost them 3 games. They scored 3 points against Michigan.
Oh, I was talking about Ohio State. I was extending the
I'm sorry. I got you.
Most prolific offense, arguably the best offense in the country with the 50th best defense. In Iowa's case, a top 10 defense and a top 100 offense.
Mark, we can't. I know everyone's talking about bling bling. We cannot forsake or forget about the importance of special teams plays.
Yes.
And Iowa had one of the best kickers in the country in Caleb Shudak. They had one of the best punters in the country in Torrey Taylor, and they had one of the best kickoff and punt returners in Charlie Jones, Mark. So they were exceptional in that category. They were exceptional on defense. What they were not exceptional with, in fact, they were bad with, was the offense. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science, Mark. And maybe that is how it's being evaluated. I just that response bothered me a bit because the question was about how do you improve the offense? Could an offensive scheme change be in order? Mark, why would you answer again? I love Kirk Ferentz, but why would you answer a question about the offense with bringing up total team wins? That doesn't answer the question, does it?
No, it basically says that we run the program the way we do. And all that matters is the final results, and we're satisfied with the final result.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to all the Kirk Ferentz fans, because I am a Kirk Ferentz fan, and if you're mad that I'm saying this, I'm sorry, but I did not approve of that. I did not appreciate that answer. Nobody cares if I approve of it, but I did not like the answer. I didn't think it was a good answer. And
I agree.
And people need to be held accountable for their. I mean, like, you getting paid millions of dollars to run the program. You got to be held accountable. And Kirk brought that up when someone asked him about Brian Ferentz being criticized, and he said, "Well, when you get paid, you deserve to be criticized." So, I mean, if Brian Ferentz, who's making just under $1 million a year, deserves to be criticized, then I think Kirk Ferentz, who's making multi-millions every year, I think he can take the criticism. And it was not a good answer.
So to me, to say, and I don't know if they're 3rd, 4th, or 5th, whatever it is, in winning percentage in that period of time in the Big Ten, I respect that. I'm not saying not everyone can be number one or anything like that. So if he was being attacked for the winning percentage, or why are we not winning championships here? It's been since what, 2002?
Oh,
Was that the
04
last Big Ten championship? 04. Yeah.
shared.
Tied for the, Michigan, Iowa. That I could understand his response to that. But
well, that's the problem. And I mean, to say, well, we're third in the conference in win percentage. Yeah, that's it. It can always be worse. But I'm just thinking, so we don't have aspirations to be the best, or we don't have aspirations to be, one of the best in the country to make the play. I mean, that's what the response. It just didn't. To me, it doesn't ignite any sort of. And I know maybe it's not his job to assure the fan base, but in a kind of way it does, because these fans are the ones that are coming to these games, I mean, the fans are the reason, right? The fans are the reason why this program can pay Kirk Ferentz how many millions of dollars, and obviously the big boosters have a lot to do with that, and they're going to keep coming to games, and he knows that they're going to keep paying money. But it's not unfair. And he answered some other questions more specifically about the offense. I don't want to act like that was the only question that was asked of him, but that specific question I thought was a very good question from Chad Leistikow, and I just didn't feel like it was answered. He did endorse his coaching staff. He did endorse Brian Ferentz, Ken O'Keefe, and his staff, and said there are not any changes on the horizon. So that's no surprise either.
I heard Ferentz make one comment concerning the offense, basically just that, we're in the process of reviewing the offense and determining what can be improved. It was a pretty generic answer, but he stated it in that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I guess, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt that, he has been successful here. I mean, again, that's a relative term relative to your era and everything going on around you, but I don't have any reason to think that the offense is going to be fixed and made to be good, because we've went over it a million times. It hasn't been good. It's been good. 2002 is a perfect example of a year where it was good. I think that's the only year where you could really say it was good, Mark. You have to go back and check those numbers all the way back to 99, because I don't think there is another year where you could honestly say that Iowa's offense was good. But that year it was, and that was because of quarterback play. In large part.
It's going to be fascinating. Not that I'm pushing Kirk Ferentz out the door by any stretch. I respect him as well. I'm not invested like you are, but I respect him, and he's built a tremendous program, and it's consistent. It's going to be fascinating, though, to see the contrast in the next head coach, to see, because typically in that introductory news conference, you get, this is where this program stands, and this is where I want to lead it, and this is what is important to me, and this is what I aspire to do.
Absolutely. And look, we've said this over and over again. We got a lot of time over the next 7 months to break down. Because what are we? Are we 7 months? When's the first? What's
September
the first?
3rd is the magic day. September 3rd is that first Saturday.
But there's week 0, right? And
August 27th.
So we're less than 7 months away.
Nebraska owns week 0 for the Big Ten. They play another week 0 this year.
And I'll say this: last year was a huge flop for them on week 0. And I said it this year. I saw what's his face that works for Fox now. Oh, you should know who he is. RJ Young, right? He used to be a YouTube guy.
Yeah.
He put out his Rose Bowl predictions, and he's got Nebraska in the Rose Bowl. And I saw some people kind of laughing at that, and I understand it, especially Iowa fans that kind of make fun of Nebraska. I would not be shocked by that, because we went over the schedules of those top 3 to 4 contenders in the West. I think Nebraska, I have no reason to think they're not going to take a step forward. I mean, I don't know how you could not take a step forward. They won 3 games last year and played everybody close. They've got a quarterback in Casey Thompson who was pretty productive at Texas, even though that was not a very good team. I think it's going to be, and then you've got Whipple, right? Whipple's your OC. Yes. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they play week 0. Who do they play week 0? Do you remember, Mark?
Northwestern. That'll
be a very intriguing week 0 game. We kind of the same way we felt about Illinois, Nebraska, because you had Brett Bielema just starting off in Illinois. People are thinking Nebraska's going to turn the corner, and you look at Northwestern, and I think people wonder, with the seesaw that is the Northwestern program, do they go from being the bottom feeders to being a contender again. So I'll be very intrigued to see. I have no idea I would have no idea at this point who to pick in that game. I think Nebraska would probably be my pick, but Northwestern, they never fail to amaze you. It seems like every other year.
Yeah, Nebraska is going to be fascinating. They are going to be fascinating to see whether the performance on the field can be lifted, elevated to a point where they turn over these one-score games.
Absolutely. Mark, do you want me to get to a couple of these questions in the chat?
Sure.
I don't want to act like I'm ignoring anybody here. So Blake, I saw you had this question up earlier. What about Matt Nagy for QB coach to replace Ken O'Keefe? I mean, I'm assuming he's kind of just, venting here. This is not a legitimate question. First of all, Ken O'Keefe is still here. Kirk's not firing him. The only way Ken O'Keefe is not the quarterback's coach this fall is if he retires. And maybe that'll happen. I don't have any reason to think it will. I've been very critical of him because it's not working right now. Just not working. But certainly Nagy is not going to be coming to Iowa City. And then I do appreciate this comment from the man here. He says it might be interesting programming to occasionally bring Don on for this segment. We did bring him on a couple of weeks ago, Mark, for a short segment, but Don's retired, so I got to give him his off season.
Absolutely.
He just had about an hour-long conversation with me on the phone today because he was actually calling me about. I talked to him about Matt Markway, who I know I talked to you about before we went live this evening. Mac Markway, of course, the 4-star tight end out of St. Louis, had originally committed. He's class of 23, originally committed to Florida, I believe in large part because he's a Tim Brewster fan. So that staff is gutted. Tim Brewster's out of a job. Mac Markway decommits, and now his recruitment is back open. So his dad, Mac's dad, played under Don Patterson in that offense, and then the first year with Kirk Ferentz in '99, which of course was a putrid year from a record standpoint. Now Matt was not. I don't think Matt Markway recorded any statistics. I did discuss that with Don, and we were trying to figure that out. I don't think Matt ever had a catch, unless him and I were both missing. And I did my research online. He went back and looked at all of his records. Like he's got everything saved from the '90s, and he could not see any box scores that had Matt Markway getting a reception at tight end. And I believe he's also moved. This is kind of an interesting fact that I haven't heard people report on, but according to Don, in '98, Matt Markway was moved to tackle. He was like 240 pounds, and he was moved to tackle because a lot has been made about him wearing the number 84 in college, which of course is the same number Sam Laporta wears, but it'll be available conceivably for Mac in a year. But I guess what I'm saying is he was moved to tackle, and his number was, I believe, changed to 77. And I don't know that he ever got moved back to tight end. I don't know that. I haven't been able to confirm that in '99 because, of course, Don was gone by then. But I know he didn't record any stats in '99 from what I saw. But Mac is an interesting recruit because, again, he's a Midwest kid. His dad played here, although I don't think he was great at Iowa. But because Tim Brewster left Florida, this leaves the door open for Iowa. Him and his dad they were both at junior day here, a week or two ago. I do think my prediction is that he'll end up somewhere where Tim Brewster, if Tim Brewster gets a job somewhere, which I would have to think he would, Mark, I would not be shocked to see Mac follow him. Just a hunch there. From what I see on social media from Mac, I think he's a pretty darn big fan of Tim Brewster, and I don't blame him. There were rumors about a week ago that Notre Dame was possibly interested in hiring Mac, and Notre Dame has offered hiring Tim Brewster. So Notre Dame has offered Mac, and would not be surprised to see him go there. Certainly would be an opportunity. We've talked about it, Mark, in that 23 class. If you were able to land Mac Markway, Kyler Casper, you've already got Marco Lainez, 4-star quarterback from the East Coast, perhaps Proctor from Southeast Pope to give you a stud at tackle. Boy, that's a loaded offensive class, Mark. And then you're going to have a couple upperclassmen in Arlen Bruce and Keegan Johnson who started at receiver as true freshmen. So an opportunity. I'm not real optimistic about Iowa getting Mac, but they're in the running, certainly. And he visited here recently.
Just to follow up on the suggestion to bring Coach Patterson on here, and as much as we can bring on Don Patterson for any content is always a plus, obviously. But I will say this, that if any of you have any requests for any media members that you would like to see here, because basically, let's be honest here. Corey carries this show. I have limited Iowa knowledge. I watch the games. I watch 7 to 9 games per year. I try to keep up as much as I possibly can, but I'm trying to keep up with everyone in the country. And certainly if there are other Iowa contributors, media writers, beat writers, anyone that you know of, send me suggestions at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. I seem to collect everything there. MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and we will reach out to those folks.
Absolutely. And I see that another question from the man here. What's with the 4-star incoming freshman quarterback, Carson May? Yeah, he'll be here, but he'll be here in the fall. And Mark, when's the last time an Iowa quarterback started as a true freshman?
Yeah, that's a tough ask as well.
I mean, it's just not going to happen.
No.
So, maybe some miracle. Maybe he'll just come in here and he'll be Johnny Unitas. I mean, maybe it'll happen. I don't predict that's going to happen. And but it should give them some competition. I'm a little bit surprised. I shouldn't say surprised, because you can't judge these kids for not enrolling early. And I know Kirk Ferentz made a point of saying this during his press conference, that he never encourages or discourages a player from enrolling early. And I get that, because certainly academics come first in all this. But it would have been nice to have him here this spring, especially now that we know Iowa's not interested in going to the portal. It would have been good for competition. But the good news is Padilla's coming back, at least for the spring. So he'll be here. So for a while, we're speculative that perhaps Padilla would leave. And in that case, you would have just Petrus and just Labus. And then who's pushing who here? So it's just good that they're going to have 3 guys returning, 2 of which have played. But yeah, I understand the fans who are putting their stock in guys like May, and especially guys like Joey Labus, because they feel like they know what they have with Padilla and Petrus, and they don't like it.
For sure.
Yakov 22 here. Have you been to Kinnick since the renovations? I have. Beautiful north end zone, Mark. Beautiful north end zone. It's done a lot for noise. Yakov 22 always has great questions. I know he's not an Iowa fan. He's always got great questions on here.
Yakov likes to go the historical route typically. So yes, ask some excellent questions. So I should be able to figure this out geographically, but where the children's hospital is, typically when they shoot the game, they're shooting it from the side of the field of the children's hospital, correct?
No.
They're not?
No, they're that's the opposite side is a press box, because the press box would be blocking the children's hospital if that was the vantage point.
Okay.
So the children's hospital, if the camera went up, you would see the children's hospital. The water tower with the Tiger Hawk is up and to the left.
Went up and swung the cameras up.
No.
Shoot the children's hospital.
No. And north end zone is to the left of where the TV camera is. So, yeah, and I will say this isn't necessarily directly related to football, but the latest numbers, and I guess I could pull that up. I talked about it on a live show a week ago on my channel, Mark, but you may have seen this, that Iowa ranks like in the top 3 in the Big Ten right now for budget deficits for the year 2021 in the Big Ten, which is interesting because they eliminated several sports, and I know the lawsuits are just scratching the surface. I mean, and I know that Doyle situation wasn't necessarily a lawsuit, but certainly having to pay him out over $1 million to leave. The field hockey, Jane Myers situation years ago, people point to that. And I've been critical of the administration. Again, we're talking year 2021. I know that doesn't have any direct implications, although they're probably still paying that. People do wonder, why is Iowa not managing money better? And of course, they've spent money. The football program is self-sustaining. I mean, it's paying for the renovations to north end zone. Those aren't taxpayer dollars. Those are donations and football money. But people do wonder, and I understand where they're coming from. Why can't Iowa seem to manage money better? Because they did lose a lot. and everybody lost a lot during COVID, but Iowa, relative to everyone else in the Big Ten, lost a substantial amount.
Yeah, I looked at those numbers. I didn't really take them in too much. I gave it a thought as to doing some type of video, but I bypassed that.
And I know there's a question here from Cheryl. Is the game, I'm going to let you answer this question, Mark. Is the game changing way too much for Coach Kirk? Old school. Is it changing too much for him? I don't know that that's, I don't know that he's just, I mean, because again, I go back to Hayden Fry. Like Hayden, they just are totally different. Here's a guy that coached 20 to 40 years ago in Hayden Fry, and they played a different style than, it's almost like we've kind of went back to being more conservative and predictable. And Hayden Fry was not that way at all.
Is Cheryl referring to the on-field product, or is she referring to transfer portal NIL?
Well, certainly, I think that you could argue that, right? I mean, Iowa right now, Mark, is the only Big Ten school that has not gotten a transfer portal player. They're the only one. They've missed. They've made some contacts. Now, I'm sure if you had to, I'm not trying to imply that Iowa is just failing on the recruiting front, because I think if you looked at who Iowa has contacted, my guess would be, and this would be an interesting project, but if you had to trace everybody, and I don't know how you go about it, but if you had to trace everybody in the Big Ten, every school in the Big Ten, and how many players they have offered from the portal, I would guess that Iowa would be in last place. The only guys I can think of that were offered by Iowa were Hunter Norzad, Nate Pete out of Stanford, who ended up at Mizzou, Steven Stilianos, and then the one guy we haven't talked about, and I can throw up his banner here, is Cam Butler, 6'3", 250 defensive end out of Miami, Ohio. And he's still on the market, but Ole Miss wants him. West Virginia wants him. And he's got some high major offers as well. And he was first team All MAC. That's going to be that's going to be to me, where Iowa's focusing its attention now that Norzad's off the board. It's Cam Butler. But those four guys are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head that Iowa has actually offered in the portal. I know I think they were in contact with Isaiah Nair from Wyoming, and I think he ended up at maybe USC. I don't remember. He had a lot of offers. So I'm sure, again, they're in the portal. It just seems like, and I know Kirk Ferentz fell back on this last week, Mark. He just fell back on the fact that, yeah, we're not getting anybody in the portal, but we also really haven't lost that many guys. We've got one of the fewest outputs as far as players going into the transfer portal. So I get that side of it. But I think it's a fair question from Cheryl. I think it's a totally fair question, because a lot of people will bring it up, but I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with style of play, because, I mean, look at Kyle Shanahan. We're comparing the 49ers to the Hawkeyes, and I don't know if that's how Kyle Shanahan wants to play, Mark, but he's a young coach, and yet they looked a lot like old Kirk. So, but you can be successful that way. The problem is you have to have wrinkles, and that's where I'm at from a schematic standpoint on offense. You have to have wrinkles to be successful. You're going to play that way. And, I mean, again, Hayden Fry had a lot of wrinkles. I'm not talking physically. He had a lot of wrinkles on the football field, specifically with the offense, with exotics and whatnot. And Iowa right now is just too predictable. I think that's how you'd sum it all up.
I think a good coaching staff will take a situation in which maybe they run into a year or two where they don't have the type of weapons that they would like to have, or the quarterback situation's not where it needs to be, or they had an injury at quarterback and they're able to rely on the overall, the complementary pieces of special teams and defense to win games and get them through a season that may not have been the best of seasons, but at a place like Iowa, I'm thinking an 8-5 kind of year. But again, just this approach that's the way we're going to take on every season. And this is the style of our program, that we're only going to score a limited number of points and produce a limited number of yardage, and that's how we're going to play football. I just don't agree with it.
Mark, the bottom line is Iowa right now, yeah, they went 10-4, but they're not playing complimentary football. Like, You can't have one of the worst offenses in the FBS and claim that you're playing complementary football. And that's what Kirk Ferentz wants to do. That's why the offensive issues should be maddening to Kirk Ferentz. I mean, and maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe he's just putting on a front in front of the news media. I don't see, when I listen to Kirk talk, I don't see a coach who's absolutely, and you should be fed up. I mean, you have to be able to rein it in, right? But you should absolutely be fed up with the fact that our offense isn't better. And maybe he is. I just don't see it when I hear him talk. I think he knows it needs to be better, but man, to be 123rd or whatever it is in total offense in the country, you're not. There's no way you can stake the claim that you're actually playing complementary football, that your offense is complementing the defense and vice versa. It's just not happening. It's not fair. It's not fair to Phil Parker, and it's not fair to the defense. It's not fair to any of the players, the offensive players or defensive players, because they deserve better.
The one aspect that isn't taken into account in terms of offensive productivity by that number is turnovers. And I don't know where they ranked last year in regards to turnovers, because if they
Very
could,
high.
if they could high in a sense of being highly ranked because they don't turn the ball
Correct.
over.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one aspect of that. I can see Iowa, because of certain recruiting limitations, playing a better brand of football that should result in more championship contention on a regular basis if they're producing a top 50 offense. Not that they should settle for that, but if it's a top 50 offense with limited turnovers, then that is playing complementary football to a great defense and special teams.
And I should let me rephrase what I said. It's highly ranked in the sense that a turnover margin. Okay. I think Spencer Petras, I had to look back at the stats. I believe he threw 8 or 9 interceptions this year. We didn't fumble the ball a lot, but I think Iowa was probably middle of the pack offensively in turnovers. I don't want to say they're towards the top. They're probably middle of the pack. But in turnover margin, as you know, Mark, the story nationally, the first 6 weeks? Remember when we were 6-0 and Iowa was on top of the world, Mark? Do you remember that when they were number 2 in the country? What did you think about that, Mark?
I do. I had them number 1.
That was a ranking that made sense based on their resume at the time.
Yes.
Because we perceived the Indiana win. We perceived the Iowa State. The Iowa State win was still a really good win. I think we'd agree it was a very good win to win that game on the road. But it was a 7-6 Iowa State team. It was a 2-10 Indiana team. The win against Penn State, that ended up being a 7-6 Penn State team.
Okay. So I went to my trusty site right here, which ranks not turnover margin, offensive turnovers.
Okay.
So, for example, Colorado. Now, there may be some defense to Kirk Ferentz and the argument that he's making. Colorado had an abysmal offense. I believe they had the worst yardage output in the nation, at least in the Power 5. They had the least number of turnovers in the nation with 7.
Seriously?
Yes, they only had 7 turnovers. They threw 3 interceptions. Now
that's called being risk adverse to a fault. That's what that is, Mark.
Lost. Yeah, it probably is. And
that's Iowa's problem. You could argue.
And that's either, and Colorado doesn't come close to Iowa when it comes to expectations or status in college football. But that could be being risk averse because you have to be, that they evaluate themselves to be that porous on offensive talent, or that they're risk averse and they're paying the price for it by not producing points.
Yeah, I think you hit that on the head. I mean, again, I know that's anecdotal evidence. That's just one example. But yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, a perfect example of that, Mark. Perfect example of that. Iowa's down, I believe, and I'm spitballing this, 20-3 in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin. Iowa's in Wisconsin territory, like the 40, and it's 4th down and like 10, I think. Maybe it might be more than like 4th and 15. Yeah. What does Spencer Petras do? Do you remember?
No. I'm just waiting for it.
He chucks the ball about 20 yards out of bounds on 4th down and 10.
Oh, I do remember that play. I was pulling my hair out. I do remember that play.
I mean, I don't even understand what to say. I don't even know what to say in that situation. I just,
You would rather have your quarterback chuck the ball straight up in the air and have it picked off or
Yes.
pick six.
Yes, absolutely.
You,
You'd rather a pick six. You'd rather a pick six, Mark, because at least it shows that you know what's going on. You throw the ball out of bounds. We don't know if you know what's going on. That's the problem. Oh.
do you know what team was 10th in the nation in turnovers, meaning in a good sense, the least number of turnovers? And I'll fill in the blank by just saying offensively, I think number one in the nation in scoring and yards per game. Ohio State was only 10th in the nation in turnovers. They didn't turn the ball over that much.
Yeah. Well, but I think you could attribute some of that to just exceptional talent, Mark. Is that fair? That you can produce exceptional talent and exceptional coaching, because you can coach discipline and fundamentals, but you also have the talent to be absolutely explosive on offense.
I don't know why this list doesn't go past 50, because according to this, Iowa is worse than 50th. I don't see them in the top 50.
Well, let's keep in mind that Spencer did get in some trouble. I mean, we're talking the first 6 to 7 games. I mean, there were almost no interceptions for Spencer Petras. He may have thrown his first interception against Colorado State. I think that's accurate. But then he had like 4 against Purdue. I know they had at least 2 turnovers against Wisconsin. He had at least 2 interceptions might have had 3 against Kentucky. So there were just a few games here and there, and those were obviously the games where Iowa killed themselves. But in the games that Iowa won, Iowa protected the ball really well. And that is, I mean, we know how important turnovers are. I am shocked by the stat that you gave me about Colorado. I mean, again, you could say it's being risk adverse to a fault, but man, that's a mind-boggling stat. As bad as Colorado was for them to be that high in that category.
Am I just missing Iowa? Anyway, I will get back to you because I am searching for Iowa on this list. Where are they?
While you're doing that, Mark, let me get to this question. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, John says, if you had to guess who is starting at quarterback on September 3rd, you will probably remember, John, as we were getting ready for the Citrus Bowl, the media made this big deal about who was the starter. Do you remember that, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought it was ridiculous. I mean,
I remember that.
Nothing against the Iowa media. A lot of those guys do a great job, but I thought it was ridiculous. And I said the whole time, Spencer Petras is a starter. We can twiddle our thumbs all we want on this. I'm not going to go that far here because there's so much. I mean, there's spring ball, and of course injuries happen, and you just never know. But certainly, I would have to give Spencer the nod at this point. I would just, again, given how Iowa wants to play, given track record with how Iowa evaluates quarterback play. I don't know how you could go. I mean, you can't go Labus. Is anybody going to sit here and say, yeah, it's Labus? Like, who's going to say that? What are you, based on what? Just hype? I mean, maybe it'll happen, but nobody's seeing, like, only people who are there at practice every day. Nobody's seeing what Labus is doing and thinking, wow, this kid's going to be so, maybe you go Padilla, but it's certainly not going to be a transfer. It's not going to be Carson Mann, and I would not bet on Joey Labus.
This is a similar question to what I hit you with last week when I asked, I wonder when the last time there's been a position coach or a coordinator fired. This would be my question for this week would be, when is the last time an incumbent quarterback at Iowa was benched? Like permanently benched for poor play. And
well, Jake Rudock. I mean, that's really the only example of that. He was
16,
15. He played in 13, 14, and was okay. I thought he was okay. People were really on Kirk about that because they wanted to see CJ. And I mean, Rudock moved on, and he went to Michigan and had a terrific year statistically. But it's a different situation because, Mark, I think both of those guys were both really good options. We forget how good Rudock was. Like, people laugh at that. Rudock was not bad at all. I'd kill for Rudock right now, Mark. Like if he could be Iowa's starter right now, that would be tremendous. And again, I bring up Cody Sokol, beginning of 2013. He went on to have a great career at Louisiana Tech. They had 3 really good quarterbacks on the roster after James Vandenberg moved along. So that would be the last time. Other than that, I mean, Jake Christensen was benched in 2008, and Stanzi never gave the job up. Jake Christensen ended up transferring, I think, to Eastern Illinois. So, I mean, that did happen, but you certainly can count those on one hand. Typically, you're going to have a starter. I mean, you're on the list, Stanzi, Stanley. We're seeing it so far. Vandenberg, Petrus. It just doesn't happen. And even we brought up during the season, Mark, every time that Padilla went in and played decently well, Padilla was not lighting the world on fire, but whenever he came in and played decently well, we were always reminded post-game that it was because Spencer Petrus was hurt. We didn't want to give anybody the idea that Spencer was being benched. So that just think about that for a second. That tells you Spencer is their guy as of right now. It's not Alex Padilla. It's Spencer Petrus. But you hope that perhaps the reason why Alex Padilla is committed to staying here this spring is because the coaches have sat down with him and said, look, I mean, and I know that's just words, but if they've sat down with Alex and said, look, we believe you have a great chance to win this job, then I would think that would give him some reason to stay, because Alex Padilla wasn't going to transfer and start at another Power 5 program. I don't think. Neither would Spencer Petrus. But I hope it's a wide open race. That's what it needs to be.
Iowa was 83rd in the nation in turnovers, meaning number 1 was best.
That's not very good.
Number of turnovers, 83rd.
Yeah, that's not very good, and that's, I mean, Kirk Ferentz he hates that, right? I mean, Kirk Ferentz is talking about, he's built on playing clean football. So, but see, that's also, I think, part of the problem, Mark. I think that's part of the reason why Iowa has been so pro Spencer Petrus, because I think he is more risk adverse. Now, again, he got into trouble the games where he threw interceptions, but typically he'll make decisions. We saw it. He'll make decisions like he did against Wisconsin on that 4th down, where he'd rather throw the ball out of bounds than take a chance. And of course, that's just that one is just kind of an anomaly, because it's just so ridiculous. And hopefully, I mean, I give the benefit of the doubt that he just didn't understand time and space. But Mark, you got to understand where you're at in the field, the circumstances. You're down 20-3. You have to know as a quarterback it's 4th down. Like it's the baseball analogy. Like before a play happens, if it's going to be if it's a grounder, you know where to throw. I mean, it's a perfect example. Pre-snap, Spencer Petrus should know pre-snap. Hey, if I get pressured, I'm not throwing this ball out of bounds. I'm chucking it down, similar to a Hail Mary, and giving my team at least a chance to go make a play, as opposed to just throw it out of bounds and give the other team the ball.
Just based on this criteria, Spencer Petrus, 57% completion percentage. I'm gonna take a pretty decent shot, and I'm guessing that I'm gonna be within a few percentage points here, that 85% of the Power 5 starting quarterbacks, had a better completion percentage than Spencer Petrus. And he threw for 10 touchdowns and 9 picks. I'm going to say the same thing. 85% of the Power 5 quarterbacks had a better TD to pick ratio than Petrus.
And this will be a good opportunity to promote my channel here for a second, Mark, because I did a video on this exact subject a couple of weeks ago, where I compared Spencer and Alex's stats to, specifically Spencer, because he was the starter the majority of the season, to every other quarterback in the Big Ten. And in almost every stat, Petrus ranked between 11th and 12th in the Big Ten. The only quarterbacks that you could say statistically were consistently below Spencer would have been the quarterback at Northwestern, who I have no idea what his name is, and the quarterback at Rutgers, who I also have no idea what his name is.
Noah Vedral at Rutgers. Now,
Northwestern. No, wait. Was it Vedral this past year?
Should have been. No?
Are you sure?
I wouldn't stake my mortgage on it, but I'm almost sure it was still Noah Vedral this past year. Let's see. 21.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 touchdowns, 7 picks.
Yeah.
50,
so
9%.
That's not good. That's not good. I mean, but see, what I'm saying is that's the league. You can't argue against that, Mark. That's the league that Iowa quarterback play has been in. It's been in the Noah Vedral league, and who's the quarterback for Northwestern?
Well, they played two of them. Hunter Johnson got hurt.
Yeah, it wasn't Hunter.
Yeah, 5-star. It was the other two. Can't think of their names.
And Hunter was never.
Ryan Holinsky was one of them. Ryan Holinsky, and he was the more experienced of the two.
Yeah. So, Andrew Marty.
Yes,
that's the one that's listed. So, for instance, if you're looking just at completion percentage here in the Big Ten, Spencer Petras ranks 11th. The only quarterbacks with a lower completion percentage for conference games only would be Noah Vedral, Ryan Holinsky, and Brandon Peters. But see, here's the difference. This is why I keep bringing it up. Like people look at Graham Mertz and say, well, he's not great. Well, the difference is they have a dominant run game. And even though Graham Mertz hasn't been great, they can pound you on the ground. And you could say the same about Illinois at times, Mark. And we agree, like, their run game has been better than Iowa's consistently over the past few. I mean, 2020 maybe being an anomaly because Iowa did run the ball effectively in 2020, but Illinois runs the ball well.
They ran the ball really well against Minnesota and Penn State, two really good defenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marty was 60%, 6 touchdowns, 6 picks, and Holinsky, I don't know why they had Marty listed as the starter. Holinsky threw a lot more passes, 54%, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks.
Yeah, you must be looking at total for the year. I'm looking at just conference play.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, Spencer for just conference play was 55%. Just for conference play, Spencer was 55%. Yeah. The only guys below him were Vedral, Holinsky, and Peters. Actually, Marty was well ahead of Spencer in conference play.
And that's the way to look at it, actually, conference, because of obviously the disparity in competition outside.
And then you can look at, again, I'm sorry to people who already watched this on my segment on my channel, but in efficiency or passer rating, I want to call it that, 112.8 for Spencer, which is 11th in the conference, ahead of only the 2 Northwestern quarterbacks and Noah Vedral. Interceptions, Spencer Petras is kind of right in the middle. So it's he threw 5 interceptions in conference, and that's actually right in the middle. So 6th best in the conference.
I wonder what the interception percentage was, though. I'm guessing he's throwing the ball less than most.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you look at let's just look at completions here. Spencer Petras 11th in completions. So that gives you a bit of an idea ahead of, again, a really good run game in Illinois, Brandon Peters, and then the 2 Northwestern quarterbacks. And Northwestern was historically bad, weren't they, Mark?
Yes.
So, I mean, we don't want to be comparing Iowa to that. That's not good. And I, again, I bring up the Caleb Williams situation too, because I heard some Iowa fans kind of dismissing that, like, oh yeah, they never had a chance. But first of all, we've already talked about this. If I'm a Wisconsin fan, I'm darn proud of Ingram and what's his face, Christ. I'm darn proud of them for going out and not being afraid.
Yeah,
and going out and making a push. That inspires confidence with me as a fan. Second thing about that is they did it, and Graham Mertz still has not ended up in the portal. So, like those people who say, well, you can't act like you're going to the portal because people will start leaving. And then, again, the other thing is Graham Mertz didn't have a good season. He's right there with Petras. The numbers would say, yeah, you're right. However, again, we're looking at the difference between a dominant run game and a non-dominant. I mean, run game's part of it. I'm not just putting it all on the quarterback. The run game is a problem too. And hopefully, we saw some progress there against Kentucky, albeit against a Kentucky team that was a bit depleted on defense. But there's just a lot of problems to fix right now with the offense. We keep saying it.
So I'm going to make one accusatory statement toward the Iowa approach, but I'm also going to defend them in another sense. When you bring up Graham Mertz statistics and his lack of effectiveness, on one hand, you could say from a coaching standpoint that Iowa's playing to its strengths and saying we can afford Graham Mertz and we don't need him as much as Iowa needs its passing game because our ground game is so dominant. Braylon Allen was ridiculous. On the other hand, you could say Graham Mertz should have benefited more from the run game. There should have been more open downfield because of the respect given by the defenses to the run game being what it was. And maybe he played even poorer considering.
Yeah.
It's logical to think that there should have been more open targets downfield for Mertz.
Yeah, absolutely. Play action opens things up and just, there's no question about that. I will say this, the one stat I missed here, Mark, total yards. Where do you think Spencer Petras ranks in total yards? Passing yards, excuse me.
10th.
12th. Ahead of Ryan Helinski and Andrew Marty.
Yeah.
The two Northwestern quarterbacks who split time. Let's keep that in mind. He split time. Now, Spencer, I get, didn't play in a couple games, right? He didn't play. Let's see. He didn't play in the Minnesota or Illinois game. He really didn't play in the Northwestern game.
Okay. These again are Big Ten stats.
Right. You're right.
Stats. Okay.
Yep. Conference only stats.
Yeah.
And according to this, conference only. So there must have been, Helinski and Marty both, they split time in games, right? I mean, that because it says that Helinski played 7 games in conference and Andrew and Marty played 6.
Yeah, they were all over the place.
So there's your answer. If you combine the two, should we combine the two, Mark? Would that make sense to combine Marty and...
It does, because they're combining to fill one role. Yes, it makes sense.
If we combine the two, then Helinski and Marty threw for actually about 1,400 yards, which would rank 9th in the conference. Now, again, there should be an asterisk on this that Petras did miss a few games, but he threw for 856 yards. He missed the Illinois game, most of the Northwestern game, and the Minnesota game. So that is a factor. I'm not going to downplay that, because a lot of these other guys played 8 or 9 games. In fact, everybody on this list in the Big Ten, as far as passing leaders, played at least 8 or 9 games.
I'm just curious, what was Ohio State's passing yardage in 9 games?
Do we have to? Do we have to bring that up?
Just curious.
Oh, you're just curious. 3,193.
Yeah.
3,001. That's actually not that far ahead of Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell was just short.
Well, yeah, he was amazing too. Yeah.
So
threw for 536 against Michigan State. Yeah, he was great.
Let's keep in mind, I saw a question earlier about the schedule. Let's keep in mind that you brought it up last week, but there's a lot of quarterbacks returning. CJ Stroud will be back. Aiden O'Connell will be back. Talia Tagovailoa will be back. Peyton Thorne is back, right, for Michigan State?
Yes, he is. Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy at Michigan.
Is Sean Clifford back?
Yes.
He's back. Is Brandon Peters coming back?
I don't know about Brandon Peters. I believe
Tanner Morgan is back. Graham Mertz is back.
Forever.
They're all back, Mark.
Yeah.
And you know who else is back? You know who else is back?
Spencer Peters.
You got it. Thank you, Mark.
The only one out of any teams that really matter that's not back is Adrian Martinez. And they've, in my view, have upgraded.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
Standpoint, I believe they have.
I would have been interested to see what Martinez would have done with Mark Whipple. That's a discussion for a different day, but I don't think I don't think they utilized Adrian Martinez's skill set fully, because man, he was spectacular in moments. I think most athletic quarterback in the Big Ten. But yeah, we'll see. Casey Thompson's intriguing, and like I said, unfortunately right now maybe Northwestern and Rutgers would be the two quarterback rooms. Just going by what I know, mainly just the starters and a couple of these backups. Rutgers and Northwestern would probably be the 2 Big Ten schools that I would actually rank below Iowa. Is that fair at this point? Would there be anybody else?
Absolutely. Maybe Illinois.
Maybe. But Brandon Peters, like I said, Brandon Peters, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. One more year with Brett Bielema for Peters. And, of course, that was his first year with Brett, if he's coming back. I'm assuming he is. How long has he been here? How long has he been in the Big Ten?
He was Michigan's starting quarterback in 2017.
Wow. So he could, if he came back, this would be This would be year 5, right? Or year 6? No, this would be
That's at
year
least
6.
year 6.
Year 6. Wow. Yeah. So I mean that might be another school but I don't know who Illinois has. Who do they have behind Brandon Peters? Anybody? Any idea?
The one recruited quarterback they had that played wide receiver that was a ridiculous speed freak. I can't think of his name. He transferred to an SEC school.
Okay, so I guess my thing on Illinois then would be why haven't they went to the portal at that position? Unless Peters is coming back. If Peters is coming back, I get it.
Yeah, I don't know for sure because I'm seeing NFL draft profiles, but that's not always accurate.
Is he projected to be drafted?
I think it's just one of those deals where they've got everybody listed. I think he's in the draft though. I think he's gone.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Yeah, Sports Illustrated has NFL draft profile Brandon Peters.
Congratulations to Brandon Peters. Congratulations to him, Mark. I mean that sincerely. He was actually wanted, but Iowa recruited him pretty hard, Mark.
Yeah, he was a 4-star. He was.
Yeah, that's disappointing. A little bit disappointing career. I mean, attack him. Again, I've heard nothing but good things about him, but that's disappointing because maybe he'll go to the NFL. Maybe you can imagine he finds a niche in the NFL. I mean, can you imagine that happens?
He's not mobile.
No. But again, Illinois, they've had a good running game, so he hasn't had to put up the awe-striking numbers.
So my assignment tonight is I'm going to figure out who's in the Illinois quarterback competition.
And what's the other thing? Is there something else you're going to find out? Oh, top winning percentages. Are you going to...
Oh, I'm not. No.
You're not going to go back there you need to do this for your national show, Mark. Top winning percentages over the past 5 to 6 years nationally, top 10.
Well, you know what I started to work on today, Corey, is this time last year I produced a program rankings 1 through 130. I ranked all the programs nationally. Guess where I had Iowa prior to last season, of course, where I had Iowa?
30.
I had Iowa at 20.
Oh, thank you. That was good.
Again, people get it confused. They think I'm ranking teams, and obviously the current team has a lot to do with it, but ranking the programs. So I'm reviewing what I did last year, and then I'm going to re-rank them, and I'm going to come out with my program rankings. So in the course of doing that, I went through all 130 teams, and I listed their 5-year record. So that'll help us there.
Are we going to, I don't know if I didn't talk about this pre-show, but are we going to start position rankings next week? Or are we going to start the week after?
That's right. We're going to do Big Ten position rankings.
Oh, excuse me. My mind is
just a review.
Shot.
Review of Iowa's.
Let's not
position
take that
room
on. Reviews.
Maybe sometime in the summer.
Position rankings, man. That would be a cool.
Oh, I think we should do it, but I think we should do it post spring practice.
Okay. So, but we're gonna break down each position every week on this show prior to spring practice. Correct?
I will help you out. I will do a little bit of homework. And what do you think we've got? How many weeks until spring practice? We need to figure this out.
If anybody has this, throw it up in the chat because I looked it up and I'm not going to bother trying to find it while we're live here. I believe first spring practice is like first week of April.
That late?
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm
earlier.
Wrong. Maybe it's earlier. I don't know.
It's usually like about March 15th, 10th to 15th, somewhere in that range.
Maybe it is mid-March. Maybe it is. I haven't.
About 10 or 11 positions. If you take each unit, there's about 10. Corners, safeties, linebackers.
Well, we're not going to do a whole show on corners and then a whole show on safeties. Are we going to bunch the defensive backs together?
Okay, defensive. Well, you got 3 levels on defense, and you've got basically 4 positions on offense, so we've got 7 positions to do.
Okay, so we should probably start next week, right? I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah, why not?
So what do you want to start with?
Anything but the quarterbacks.
Anything but quarterbacks.
We've agreed with that.
Anything but quarterback.
For me. I'm going to learn some personnel.
Let's start with running back next week. How does that sound?
Running back next week. Okay.
We'll start with the offense, folks. We'll start with running back. We'll bunch the backfield together. We won't do a whole show on fullback. So we'll just do running backs, backfield in general, starting next Tuesday.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, Mark. Appreciate the time as always, sir.
Yes, thanks for hosting.
All right.
I certainly did not serve the role of analyst. You were host and analyst this week.
That's okay. You're gonna find remind me again your project that you're gonna do tonight. Illinois' quarterback room.
I want another quarterback room.
Hold on a second.
I'm working on my 1 through 130 rankings.
Can you react to Kevin's comment real quick?
Gonna have to grab my unfair to Petrus. Well, I just feel as though I hope that Corey and I know that it's his aim, it's mine as well, is to be fair and take everything into consideration, which we do. We were just doing a statistical analysis, just kind of extending on what Corey's already done. So please head on over to From the Hawkeye of the Storm and catch Corey's segment where he's breaking down Big Ten quarterback play in conference. So that's a very, if you want to go by statistics, a pretty accurate assessment because you're negating the non-conference play, which is sporadic in regards to difficulty of opponent. And that's where Spencer Petrus ranks. Now, are statistics everything? No, they're not everything, but they're darn close to it. I think it tells 80 to 85% of the story. And we try to give some context to the rest of it.
My memory gets shot in a lot of things. Like I forget where I put my phone and it ends up being in my hand. So that's where I'm at in life, Mark. But here's what I'll say about Kevin. I appreciate Kevin, one of our loyal commenters on here. I think Kevin, I hope I'm not speaking for Kevin, but I think he's very, very passionate about the fact that it doesn't matter what quarterback, it doesn't matter which coordinator. Iowa's offense has always been mediocre under Kirk Ferentz. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, and I understand that vantage point. I'm not disagreeing with you. But I would just say that the numbers bear out that quarterback play has got to take a huge step forward. We just went through most of the numbers again. You put a plug in for my channel, but I appreciate what he's saying. And scheme that's why we brought up that question from Leistico earlier in the show, because it's a very, we're going to have time to talk about all this during the offseason. Not only is scheme an issue, play calling's an issue, clock management. I really want to take a deep dive into clock management because that's a huge issue. But I appreciate his perspective on this, and I'm not trying to be unfair to anybody in all this, just trying to be unbiased.
I'll just say as an addendum that because of the style of offense, we are not expecting Spencer Petrus to throw 47 touchdowns like CJ Stroud did, but he threw 10 touchdowns, and they didn't throw the ball 1/4 of the time. And I shouldn't make that comparison to the number one offense in the country. I think Corey's being kind in regards to using the term mediocre, which by many definitions means average. 123rd in the nation's not average.
No.
So they are failing on that side of the ball.
And I've said it many times. I'll say it again. It is not just quarterback.
No.
It's just not. You don't get those kinds of numbers if it's just quarterback, Mark.
No. I didn't feel good about Spencer Petrus's, not his performance, but where he was placed, in particular in that Wisconsin game. I didn't think he had a chance. They didn't block. They didn't pass protect. He had no chance in that game.
Yeah. I mean, pass protection's huge. I mean, it's just absolutely, and that's a concern because Iowa has a fairly new offensive line coach. It's new to Iowa, just hired last summer in George Barnett. That's got to be like if we head into this coming season and the line hasn't improved at all, then we're probably looking for a new offensive line coach. I don't know how long you retain a guy who hasn't proven anything at this level and doesn't have any connection to the program other than the fact that Kirk Ferentz hired him. If you're not seeing some improvement after year two, and I know that you got to extend some leash here, but no, you're right. You hit it on the head. Pass protection was a huge part of it. But I go back to the Kentucky game for people that like to say, well, pass protection is because there's so many people out there, Mark, that say it's the problem. Just as much as saying quarterback is the problem, just as wrong as that is, it's equally as wrong to say pass protection is the problem, because against Kentucky, Mark, regardless of the reason, whether that's because Iowa blocked better or because Kentucky was down starters, Iowa, they didn't give up a single sack in that game. Not one. Okay. And the last offensive play of the season was an interception by Spencer Petras because he didn't see the free rusher on the left edge. And that's the best explanation I can give. And I asked Don what happened on that play. Don said he looked at it several times, couldn't exactly figure it out. The only explanation, again, is that Spencer missed something pre-snap. So I would not equate that with bad pass protection from your front five. My point being, they've got an issue right now collectively everywhere with, again, all those categories and more. The reason we keep harping on the quarterback is it's the most important position on the field. And it's clearly a problem. So you just, that, and that's the crazy thing. And I know we're running out of time here, Mark. Last thing I'll say, Kirk Ferentz has pride in this program based off of development, fundamentals, mechanics, good production, good ball protection, all those things. That's all important, right? And the fact that they've developed tight ends to be NFL players, offensive linemen to be NFL players, cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers everywhere. And yet quarterback play is lacking some of the basic fundamentals that's essential to being a good to average to good quarterback. That's a big concern because there's not development taking place at that position. And that's really the only position that I would say. We've talked about how Iowa has not developed running backs, and that's true. But they've gotten production here and there from running backs at this level. They maybe haven't developed them into NFL players, but they have rarely gotten really good production from quarterback during the Kirk Ferentz era, minus Brad Banks, maybe CJ Beathard. But everywhere else, it's been pretty average at best, and it's not been average, even close to average these last couple of years.
I will let everyone know that I'm headed over to do our Nebraska live show. So if you want to check in on the competition, go to our Nebraska Voice of College Football channel, and we're starting up here in just a couple minutes. So we will wrap it up. I don't think you can end the show, can you? That's all.
I can. Do you want me to?
Yes, I'm ducking out right now. Corey, thanks. We'll see you next week.
Appreciate it, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Iowa Basketball Postgame show Thursday night after Iowa. And who do they play on Thursday? Maryland. Iowa, Maryland over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a great night.